Heyo, what's happening, guys? Welcome back to another video. You know what, that intro jam, that was, it was all inspired by those drums. I found a drum patch called Levee, so it's obviously like from When the Levee Breaks. And it was like a mixture of Purple Rain meets, When the Levee Breaks. So that's what that intro was. Now today, we're going to talk about something that you guys called me out on this. You told me I haven't been doing this. I've been doing, videos, guitars beginner should avoid, pedals beginner should avoid. And you're like, bro, what is the stuff we should get? All you're telling us is what not to get. And I was like, you know what? You're right. I feel you. So I'm going to talk about guitars that I think would be great for a beginner to start on. And we're just going to go from that. Now, I do want to kind of like add in here, this is not a sponsored video in any way, so any brands I talk about, it's because I feel like talking about them. So leave your comments down below with stuff that you would recommend for a beginner to get. We did the avoiding thing, so let's, what should they be getting? You know what? I'm going to change my mind. This video is sponsored. It's sponsored by this wannabe Eric Johnson tone that I have dialed in today. Alright, now the first thing I want to talk about is something I experienced a lot. I've referenced many times for you guys that I taught in-person guitar lessons for many, many years to, just a huge array of different people who wanted to learn to play guitar. And one thing I found that really did hinder people is if they needed or did not need a 3/4 size guitar. Now, I would see some students, some real small kids, come in, and they would have to play on these huge guitars. And I'm like, man, and I would tell the parents, I said, you might want to think about getting them a 3/4 guitar because they would just have a hard time reaching the notes, or it'd be like a big acoustic and stuff like that. And I really think that that makes it difficult for the student. And 3/4 guitars get a bad rep because typically they're not the best. My son has a 3/4 guitar, and I just tried out a bunch of different ones, and then I set the guitar up. They just require a little bit of TLC to get them to where they're decent working guitars. But I'm telling you, nothing is harder on a student if the guitar is just too big for them. Like if they're really wanting to play, I know it seems ridiculous because you're going to have to buy a second guitar a little bit later, but just understand that a full-size guitar can hinder just a kid or person who's just smaller, who has a hard time with it. Rock a 3/4 scale guitar and, just plan on buying another guitar a little bit later down the road. But I'm telling you what, just the right size guitar is so important. Now next is one that obviously you see has taken the internet by storm. It's everywhere. It is the Harley Benton guitars. Now I think that these are really, really good beginner guitars. I had one here that they had sent me a couple years ago. I actually gave it away to a person who was starting out because I thought it would be a good beginner guitar. And I was really impressed. They're in a very fair price range for kind of like what they are. If they've raised the price of them, that might be pricing them out of, kind of what I would recommend. But if you can find them on the used market, by all means, get one of those. Because you can get, basically the style of guitar that you want. Like maybe you want a Les Paul Jr., or you want a Strat, or you want a 335. I think they pretty much make a copy of everything. And, they make them very affordable. And they're, like I said, they're just fun guitars. Do I think that they're as good as, like my Les Paul or something like that? No, but you also don't need to be starting on a Gibson Les Paul. Like I said, start on a Harley Benton, dip your toes in the sand a little bit, and they're really good guitars, really good bang for your buck guitars. So the next one is actually one that I mentioned that you should avoid, but I gave a stipulation. I want to mention it again just because I think it's so important to kind of like, to mention this because it's what a lot of people are going to start on. Now, just like in the ones you should avoid part 1, I think that starter kit guitars are a little bit tough. I typically have not played many, if any at all, that really played great out of the box. And as a beginner, I'm guessing that you don't know how to set up a guitar. Maybe you do. Maybe you're one of those, just super tech savvy guys who can work your way through that stuff. But what I will recommend is if you get one of these starter kit guitars, like literally out of a box, get it set up. Like I said, I know I'm kind of like, repeating myself from the previous video, but I just think it's so important because a lot of people, parents, friends, family, whatever it is that's buying someone their first guitar, they might not know anything about guitars, and they might see this starter kit and just be like, oh, here, it's got everything he needs. It's all right here. Gig bag, pick. Little tiny cable that will die in a week. You know, it comes with all that stuff. And just, you know, like I said, it's worth the investment to get the guitar set up. You know, get someone, they're probably going to need to check out the frets, adjust the neck. Oh God, so many of those guitars coming out of the box, the fretboards are so dry, they look like they've been, you know, chilling in the desert. So they need to be conditioned, all that kind of stuff. So there's a lot that goes into it, but if you do it, you can make those starter guitars really good, and you kind of get everything you want in there. Now I just realized that I sat the guitar too far away from me to get. I was going to recommend Danelectros. I think those are really, really cool, especially, you know, you can either get a new one and they're, you know, fairly priced, or you could get a used one. Now if you're the type of person who just doesn't really care for the look of a Strat or a Tele or a Les Paul, you know, I think the Danelectros could be a good option, because obviously they're kind of like funky looking. You know, they're different, they're like super retro looking guitars, and if you are looking for something that's just different, that honestly they sound different. They have their own sound. If you get the ones that have the single lipstick pickups in there, I've always said they sound like a cross between a Tele and a Strat. Or you can get the ones that have the double lipstick, which is kind of like a humbucker. So, like I said, if you're just looking for something different, I think these guitars are really, really amazing. I think they're made in Korea, and they're just good. You know, as you guys know, if you've been watching my channel for a while, I love Danelectros. I have a bunch of them, and I love the way they sound. Also, if you're just a Jimmy Page nut like me, of course, you love Danelectros, specifically the 59s. Those are the ones. Now the final thing is another one that I want to kind of like reiterate from a previous video, and that is used guitars. You've heard me mention it a couple of times in this video, like, oh, well, you know, the Harley Bentons, like, find a used one. They're all over the place, and they're like super cheap. And you know, you could start out with something like that. Or if you have a little bit bigger of a budget, I mean, you can get a Mexi Strat that's used. The biggest thing about buying a used guitar is that thankfully there's not a lot of stuff that can go wrong with the guitar to where it's like unfixable. Truss rods being maxed out, stuff like that. You know, you're getting into some fishy territory. But this is just where I recommend, if you have any friend, or, you know, buddy, or if you know someone that works in a store, like they're a personal friend, have them recommend some used guitars for you. So the big thing is, like I said, you know, as a beginner, you might not even know how to play guitar yet. I remember when I was getting my first guitar, I didn't know how to play guitar. They just like sat it on my lap. What you think of this one? I'm like, yeah, sweet, it's a guitar. Like, that was the like extent of what I knew. But I wouldn't have known, like, oh, there's dead frets, the neck has a twist in it, you know, the nut, it needs a new nut, like, who knows, the bridge is all messed up, pickups out of it, you know, who knows what can be wrong with a used guitar. But if you have someone who knows a little bit, go do it. Or if you're like me, and when I was a kid buying guitars, I just wung it. I just got the guitar that looked cool. And thankfully it all panned out pretty well. But, you know, a lot of people don't want to like risk that kind of stuff. So, you know, used guitars can be a huge bang for your buck. You can get a really good guitar used. I mean, Craigslist, Facebook Marketplace, Reverb, all these places. I get, you know, I've been getting a lot of used guitars recently, and I haven't had any issues with them. So there you guys have it. Let me know what you think down below. And like I said, let's kind of like make a little list of, you know, guitars that you guys would recommend. I'm sure there's a lot of brands that I don't even know about that are making killer stuff. I heard people mention a brand called Firefly. I don't know much about them, so I'm not recommending them because I don't know anything about them. But I see that name pop up a lot. So other than that, I'm going to bounce on out of here, guys. I'll lay down some rhythm for you. And other than that, just have a great Wednesday. And I think Friday, I might get to do the studio tour. Let's hope, fingers crossed, that Friday will be the studio tour. I know I've been putting it off for a long time. But it'll happen at some point. So let's go, guys. Have a great rest of your day. Later!